This is the Psychedelic Spotlight podcast, and I am your host, David Flores, CEO of Global Track Solutions. And joining me here today is David Champion. He is the co-founder and CEO of Maya Health. David, it is a pleasure to have you here with us today. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, David.
Oh, very happy to have you on. So, Maya Health's mission here is to empower psychedelic practitioners with the technology and insight they need to scale psychedelic healthcare safely and effectively. I know that the company is also focused on integrating data and analytics here into the emerging sector of medicinal psychedelics and helping to create more effectiveness and efficiency for both therapists as well as patients as this industry continues to evolve. So I'm very excited to dive into this topic and learn more about Maya Health. So maybe to kick things off here, David, if you want to maybe give us an overview of Maya Health and what specifically the company is focused on.
Well, yeah, the journey I've been on might be relevant to start with. I've had many personal, very meaningful experiences with psychedelics, but also several really challenging journeys. And the question started to emerge, sort of why on the same dosage and seemingly the same type of psychedelic journey is one experience going sideways and becoming really challenging, and another is sort of positive and everything I had hoped for with the right intentions. And as a technology and data entrepreneur, most of my career, I started to wonder, what if we could capture more data from across the world of how psychedelic practices are being offered and really honor the different therapists and coaches and shamans and guides, and understanding how they offer these novel treatments, how they're bringing people through essentially a care journey that involves psychedelics. And so the Maya platform has been designed to support these practitioners in the work they're doing, but also capturing the data that represents their unique way of offering psychedelic services. And our vision is that over time, we capture enough data about these different journey types, and that data starts to show where are the practices that are working, where are the ones that are working the best, what practices might need to be avoided to avoid harmful outcomes. And of course, there's more nuance than that, because perhaps some practices are more suited to a specific type of individual, and others are different. So this is the vision for Maya. Where we're at today is that we have a platform ketamine therapists in the US are using, and Maya platform is designed to be the first measurement-based care system for psychedelics.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is such a fascinating platform here, and I think ahead of the curve in the sense that you are really anticipating, where things are going here with this space. And I mean, it's no secret we're currently, in the midst of a very serious mental health crisis, and I know that I speak with therapists and practitioners every single day, and one of the things that they tend to tell me a lot is, how overwhelmed they are, with patients, just constantly reaching out to them and needing help. And so I know a big part of what Maya's platform is designed to do is to create a little more efficiency and help streamline this process here between the therapist, practitioners, and their patients. Do you want to dive a little more into how it is creating a more streamlined process here?
Great question. Really, the amount of work that a practitioner needs to do to bring somebody safely through this care journey is far greater than I think most of us are aware of. So everything from the screening process, the intake process, the ability to capture some information on where somebody's at. So like mental health indications, their quality of life, their habits and mood and life outlook, or even sense of community, their diet. There's so much information that tells us about where somebody's at when they're first seeking a psychedelic treatment or a ceremony. And then of course, there's an opportunity to capture information in the middle of that journey, and then to capture more data at the outcome level. So practitioners are aware that they want to be doing that, but the administrative overhead is so great that often it's just not realistic for them to do that. It's already enough work to just calendar the right sessions and send the emails with the right preparation information, and then of course following up and so forth. And what we found is that practitioners wish they could have a more high fidelity, engaging, and really embracing experience for their patients or clients, but it's not realistic with the current tools available. And so this is where Maya comes in. We looked at that entire journey that a person goes through. We broke it out into phases such as screening, intake, preparation, treatment, integration, and so forth, and then understood that there are various specific types of events that happen in each of those phases. And like I said earlier, each practitioner has their own method. They have their own protocol or journey type that they think is working best. So Maya doesn't try to tell them that they should do anything differently, but instead allows them to program that method into a system that then automates every single step in the process, while giving the flexibility for the practitioner to alter it or customize it to an individual patient's needs.
Very fascinating. Now, is the platform, is it available now or is it still in the developmental stage?
It's available. It will always be in the developmental stage,
Mhm.
of course, but we are um, live with treatment centers and clinics in the US. We will be expanding internationally as well, but for now we're focused in the US, and we're in private beta. So we welcome any practice that's interested in using Maya to come to us, and we'll have a quick call and make sure it's the right fit, and then we're ready to offer the platform as of today.
Great. So now I know we were chatting a little bit before we started the recording here about our prior, professional experience in the cannabis space, and I'm curious, was there anything that you learned through, your involvement in the cannabis industry that maybe has struck you that and inspired you, here with the work you're now involved in with Maya that has essentially been like, yes, this is exactly why data and analytics and everything like this is going to be so important, specifically here for the psychedelic space?
It really was a smooth transition for me from the cannabis sector to psychedelics, because the initiative that I was focused on at my last company, Baker, uh, around the time that we exited the company and I moved on, was this initiative to measure how different cannabis strains are affecting different people. And many folks don't know that individuals have their own endocannabinoid profile that causes them to react differently to different strains of cannabis. And that idea was such an inspiration to me that whereas we had previously seen the cannabis industry as this product-centric market where a product is packaged and it's sold and a consumer buys it and takes it, to this idea that individuals could receive a better experience or even a more healing medical experience from a different product if we started to learn from the data about what's working for whom. And that was the natural transition for me to want to look at the same thing in the psychedelic space. So we're very much a data-centric organization that recognizes that right now the experts are the practitioners. And so what they're offering is not necessarily a product as much as it's an experience. And this is a major distinction, I think, between cannabis and psychedelics on the surface, at least, is that the experience-centric nature of the psychedelic space is calling in different types of platforms like Maya and others that are looking beyond the compound, beyond the product.
Yeah, and on that, looking beyond the compound and the product, I mean, that seems to be where so much of the focus and attention is on right now, which is great. And how some of these companies, whether it's MindMed or Compass Pathways or even Field Trip Health, are developing a lot of these psychedelic compounds and medicines designed to be more patient friendly. But on the other side of this, I mean, this all sort of plays into it as well. I mean, you're creating an entire experience, and it does go beyond just the compounds and the medicines. And so I think this is why this is so fascinating that you guys are currently focused on here, because I think it is going to be a big part of the infrastructure that we're seeing developed here around the psychedelic space and the psychedelic industry. I want to talk a little bit more about your own professional background, and experience, and how you're sort of leveraging all of that here in the psychedelic space now with Maya Health, and if you can maybe share a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Well, I started as an architect, so user experience is at the core of everything I do. And sometimes it's helpful for me to explain how those two things relate. Architecture, in my opinion, is not really how a building looks so much as how it feels or how somebody moves through it and how that experience affects their behaviors or how they're relating to the people around them and that kind of thing. So it's actually a really natural evolution to think from physical buildings to on-screen experiences that if an app or a website is designed really well, then it can help people improve their lives, cultivate better habits, better behaviors, and connectivity with each other. And by no means is all technology designed with that in mind, but that's my philosophy for designing software. And so similarly to how we built Baker for the cannabis industry to help more people safely embrace cannabis with more education, more transparency, and at the heart of it, really a more beautiful customer experience. I'm very focused on having Maya create a more beautiful patient or client experience for the psychedelic sector. And this is, as I said, the heart of what we do. Another lesson that came from Baker was interconnectivity. We were a few years into that project before we built an API, and that's the term used to allow one software platform to connect with another. And at Maya, this was the foundation of what we're building. It's a system that sits at the heart of the patient journey, but also connects with other solutions, other providers. So we are building an ecosystem of those connections, such as being able to pull in data from somebody's Apple Watch so that the Maya platform can also show them how their heart rate variability has shifted or how their sleep patterns have maybe changed over the course of their psychedelic treatments. And that type of integration, that type of ecosystem of connectivity is, I think, as much a philosophy as a technology strategy. This philosophy that we want to be in good relationship with everyone that's trying to kind of bring safe psychedelic practices to the world. We don't see ourselves competing in the traditional sense. We see ourselves being cooperators with other solutions providers, clinics, and every operator that's really trying to see the same mission come to life as we are.
Yeah, and you mentioned, creating an ecosystem, and that really stood out with me. And I think that probably plays into the big picture here and what you guys have planned here for the future. You also mentioned earlier, perhaps expanding at some point internationally. Do you want to maybe share a little bit about what you see ahead here in the years to come? I mean, the industry itself is still very much in its infancy, and we're only scratching the surface with its potential. But it seems you guys have a very solid grasp on where things are, not just right now, but where they're potentially going. You seem to be positioning yourselves quite effectively to be able to anticipate some of these opportunities that are going to come about in the years to come. But big picture, where do you see the industry going, and what do you see Maya's role playing in all of this as the industry continues to grow and evolve?
Well, thanks, David, for that observation. I love the analogy that Adam on my team came up with, which is that in a way we have to play the role of a DJ where we're playing one track right now, but also have to be aware of what that next track is that we'll be mixing in. And so an example of that is right now our platform helps a practitioner in their practice to optimize their workflows, to capture more data, to create more insight between them and their patients. But as we gather more and more practitioners on the platform, like you said, we will become an ecosystem and a global one at that. And I'm very inspired by, perhaps I won't name him, but an individual in New Zealand is launching the first ketamine clinic there. And he came to us sometime last year and said, okay, I'm going to be launching a leading ketamine clinic. He's a medical practitioner. He has a very robust understanding of the medical procedures and especially how they can relate to ketamine. But he still wanted to learn what have ketamine providers in the US been doing for the last 4 or 5 years, what lessons have been learned, which protocols are working the best for which types of patients, and essentially can he skip those 4 or 5 years of trial and error by learning from these best practices and embracing or offering those in his clinic. And that was a major point of inspiration for us becoming a platform of best practices. So a practitioner can use Maya within their practice, but then once they see that something they're doing is working, like I said earlier, a methodology that's working, they can publish that to our global community. And then this individual in New Zealand can observe, okay, this was a practice that works. I'm going to try that in my own clinic. And by sharing practices in that way, we're hoping we can accelerate the evolution of growth for this space, and also allow many practitioners who know that it would take them years to cultivate their own methods, and they want to be able to share in more transparent ways than I think is standard for the healthcare model as it has been.
Yeah, I mean, and there's no denying the interconnectedness that's associated with, I mean, most industries, but I think this one in more specifically, especially given how novel everything associated with it is. Everyone is trying to learn and understand what works versus what doesn't work, but doing it in a safe and responsible manner. And so I think creating those pathways so that people can connect with one another, I think there's so much value in that. And that's really a lot of what I see here with what you've created. And I look forward to continuing to following the progress here of Maya. This has been a wonderful first introduction to the company, David. I want to thank you so much again for coming on. And I want to have you on again. I know there's a lot more we can probably chat about, but this has been a wonderful first introduction. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, David. I would love to join you again, and we'll be in touch regularly until then.
Yeah, and we'll make sure we get all of the website information added here to the podcast. If anybody wants to go out and take a look and learn more about My Health, they'll be able to do so. But again, thank you so much, David. I appreciate it.
Thank you.